Operation Truth. The show they don't want you to see. Now, here's your host, Lou.
Okay, guys, welcome to Operation Truth. It's an interesting branding. We rebranded our older podcast, which was Between the Lines. Decision was made by the higher-ups, Brian Williams, who's really the architect of this, in conjunction with T.J. Stone, the producer, and some other individuals. As usual, I just want to remind everyone, this is not about contention. We're not pointing fingers. We're not telling you who to vote for. We're trying to give you food for thought. As you can probably detect, there's a gigantic void in this culture when it comes to this word truth. I want to just cite one quick example. There's no question we need to visit the ease and access of firearms when it comes to the mentally ill or emotionally disturbed people. We need to really sit down and have a conversation, preferably with the adults in the room. But the truth attached to this is there's no gun control coming your way, guys. So stop getting amped up when you hear these knuckleheads talk about it. And I don't care what side of the aisle. They're all misinforming you. Here's the truth attached to the topic. The legitimate, conservative, low-end estimate of guns in our country is about 500 million. I told you we have about 350, 360 million. That's more guns than we have people. Assault rifles pushing probably 50 million. The ATF came out, and when Tom comes on, if I'm wrong with this number, I want you to correct me, Mr. Fuentes. Estimated about 1 billion guns in this country. I remind everyone, for those that are not really literate in this area, and I don't encourage you necessarily to become literate, but we had a period of time where there were no serial numbers on guns. We're living in a time right now where we're talking about ghost guns. That's a firearm that is basically a piece of plastic, for example, in the configuration of a Glock pistol or even an AR platform, this notorious M4 platform, the assault rifle. They're plastic. They have no internal parts that work. They're manufacturing those at rapid pace right now in the country, and the country has no idea how many. So instead of trying to rile the public up and further divide us on this topic, we need to boil it down a little bit and start figuring out what mechanism can we put into place that would prevent people who are mentally ill or emotionally unbalanced from garnering weapons. Because I hate to break it to everybody, independent of the lie being told to you, the gun didn't change, the culture changed. We have an issue with mental health. And if you really look closely at all of these mass shootings, there's a failed parenting mechanism attached to it. And sometimes the parents are in over their heads with their children because their children are displaying clinically rooted problems that they're not prepared to handle. And that's not to be derogatory, but if you're living in Kansas, not New York City, where we're just inundated with counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists, you don't know what to do with the kids. They become disenfranchised and they kind of wander off. You don't know how to support them. Big conversation to have about this, but I just want to dispel this whole issue about gun control. To further this, we now have 26 states as of July 1st, a few days away, that have what we call constitutional carry, which basically lends itself to the fact that if you want to carry a gun in any one of these 26 states, you may do so based on the protections provided to you by the Second Amendment. They can beat this drum all they want. They can fill you full of smoke and mirrors. And I don't want to be critical of the government. I'm just going to truthfully critique last year's bipartisan gun control bill with enhanced background checks. I'm still waiting for someone to explain to me what that really means. And the funding towards school safety, which I haven't seen materialize, or the funding for the mentally ill, which I haven't seen materialize. That's right. Let's not talk about the mental illness issue, because that's the heavy lift in the country today. It's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to cost bodies to come facilitate it. In any case, just a little food for thought for you today. I encourage you guys to challenge what I'm saying. Don't take what I'm saying as dogma. I don't want to spoon feed you. That's the problem in the culture today. We have all of these media outlets, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS, all of them want to sell you a line of their agenda, which has a political attachment to it. That's what's wrong here. We're not journalists anymore. We're entertainers. We're not journalists anymore. We're politicians. Abandon your agenda and start looking at the impact on our children, your agenda. You're destroying the country. One final note before I go into Tom. I love this reference to Generation X and Generation Z. It's really entertaining to see how you've labeled our children. I can tell you growing up, and Tom will attest to this as well, and Brian Williams, the architect of this endeavor, and many, many other people. We grew up in a country where we never questioned our government, where we believed in the media. That's before the 24-hour news cycle, I might note. We didn't question institutions like the judicial. We're selectively prosecuting, we're selectively enforcing the law, we selectively report, and I don't know what to say about the elected officials. I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on here today. But independent of that, I'm proposing we start to put all of our efforts into problem solving. Put your agenda aside, reintroduce the truth, some honor, some integrity, and a proactive exercise to fix these problems. So I want to take a 2-second break. I'm going to come right back to you with Tom Fuentes. And I've got to be honest, I want to ask Tom about whistleblowers because I know Tom knows about them. We'll be right back, guys.
The world is in crisis, with political unrest and financially unstable countries trying to print their way to prosperity by taking on trillions of dollars of new debt. It's incredibly concerning. That's why you need to own silver as a hedge. So call today to receive the free hard asset information kit on how easy it is to own silver. Green energy demands will possibly turbocharge silver prices to 50, 100, even 300 an ounce, according to many experts around the world. Silver is a proven hedge against inflation. Since 1971, silver has returned over 11% when averaged yearly. Silver is a proven wealth preservation for hundreds of years. Hard Asset Management is a trusted leader in precious metals and rare coins for nearly 40 years. We have the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, expedited shipping, with award-winning customer service available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. CST, Monday through Friday. So protect yourself from the chaos. Invest in stability with Hard Asset Management. Call now and get your free Hard Asset Management information kit on how easy it is for you to own silver. 844-426-4653. 844-426-4653.
And as I promised, I want to introduce Tom Fuentes, a former assistant director of the FBI. In a prior episode, just prior to this, Tom provided a tremendous amount of insight as to what the FBI does abroad. He oversaw, I believe it was 80 offices and all the FBI agents attached to them. And he did this on behalf of the FBI. He's very, very knowledgeable. And as I say, every time I talk to this guy, I learn something else. I was headed to the FBI. I won't tell you how I got derailed, but I wish I'd gone down this path with this guy because he's just incredibly smart. And I love smart people. But Tom, I want to ask you, you're with me, Tom, number one. Are you with me today, sir?
I'm here.
Thank you.
Yes,
I want to ask you, I'm a little confused, Tom, because I'm listening to this term whistleblower. So if you blow the whistle and we're not allowed to see what you're blowing the whistle about, I hate to pin this on the FBI, but they redact the whistleblower's allegations. What's the value of the whistleblower? And this isn't a classified document. Am I correct, Tom? So what's going on here, buddy? I'm trying to figure out how do we whistleblow, but we're not afforded the luxury of seeing what the whistle was being blown about.
That's
I yield the floor.
And
Okay.
the other question with that is whether the FBI retaliates against whistleblowers that are legitimate whistleblowers that have come forward. They see wrong activity happening within the FBI or wrong policies being carried out, and they've pointed it out to their supervisors and management, and they've been rejected in their opinions, and have ended up going to people like Senator Grassley, who for years has accepted whistleblowers to come to him, and then he would try to afford them protection, whether they're from the FBI or IRS or even other non-law enforcement agencies. But I think that what we've heard in the recent cases, allegations from the whistleblowers of some of the policies being carried out by the FBI that they think are wrong, and criticism of current executive management of the FBI, which to me lends itself to a great deal of discussion, or it should. And I think that that's one of the differences. Now, in the case of the Form 1023, where we have the latest allegation of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden taking money from a Ukrainian oligarch, the head of Burisma, their energy company, you have an informant, confidential human source, and there are different categories of informants depending on whether they're going to testify or can't or might have to testify, or just or they're cooperating defendants. They're trying to work off something so they don't go to jail for as long of a time by cooperating with the government. But in this case, you have an informant, long term, more than 10 years, they're claiming, confidential source who has been proven credible in the past, reliable in the past, and has been paid more than a couple $100,000, which is a sign of credibility and reliability if you're paying a source that much. And the source issued statements to the FBI in 2020 discussing how the source was aware that money had been paid by Burisma in Ukraine to Hunter Biden. And we've had all these allegations about Hunter from all sources, China and other countries, for many years. But in this case, that Joe Biden specifically negotiated with this oligarch for his own $5 million. And now you have the House Oversight Committee saying that those numbers could reach 20 or $30 million in bribery to the Biden family, and some of that to Joe Biden directly from the time he was vice president.
Tom, can I interrupt you for 1 second, sir? In your opinion, do you think that the element in the government that are pursuing this are going to be able to establish this, number one? And number two, you mentioned Senator Grassley, and he spoke specifically to 17 recordings that I guess he was privy to, he listened to. At what point is the public entitled to listen to these recordings? Because I do want to say one thing.
I don't think Grassley listened to the recordings. I think he was made aware through that source in that report that recordings were made. Specifically, I think 15 telephone recordings with Hunter Biden and 2 specifically with Joe Biden.
So my question, Tom, is
vice president.
Do those recordings actually exist, sir?
I don't know.
Okay, that's one thing
about that. They could be in the hands. They could be in the hands of the Ukrainian, who may still possess those. And the allegation that they were designed as an insurance policy to prove that what was going on, that the bribe was actually conducted between the Bidens and this individual from the Ukraine. Now, one of the things, in my opinion, where the FBI screwed up in this whole thing is, at first, the report comes out from apparently a whistleblower saying the FBI has a report from 2020 alleging these bribes that have occurred between the Bidens and Ukrainians, and that recordings exist which could back it up, and that basically nothing happened with it. We have the FBI with a laptop for 3 or 4 years, and nothing comes. All these investigations that appear to have been done by the FBI have been basically slow tracked or not worked or obstructed. And whistleblowers have basically been telling us that. But in this case, the mistake the FBI made, in my opinion, is that they show Grassley, after he fusses back and forth with the FBI director. First, the FBI says there is no such form. Then they finally, okay, there is a form, but it's we're not going to share it. Well, they find out from the whistleblower it's not classified. So it can be released if you're worried about the protection of the informant.
You're going right where I want to go right now, Tom, not to interrupt you, because everybody's got to listen to what you're saying right now, because now this form exists. And when this form is presented to the Republicans who are pursuing this issue, it's heavily redacted. Am I correct, Tom? And this goes to my question
no. That's not exactly how it went.
Go ahead.
The report that Grassley sees, the name of the sources and some of the identifying information, which would help identify who the source is, that's redacted. The contents of what that source provided in the report is not redacted. So Grassley sees the part of the report that lists these phone calls that are recorded by the executive or the head of Burisma with the Bidens. Then the House Oversight Committee wants to see that report also. Congressman Comer's committee, he wants to see that report. And the FBI, they argue back and forth with that. And finally, the chairman of the committee threatens Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, with holding him in contempt. So finally, he gives in, and they bring the report to Capitol Hill, go into a skiff, and they show the report. And then eventually they show it.
Tom, let me stop you. Why a skiff? This isn't classified information. Am I correct, sir?
Is that a correct statement? yeah, the FBI's claim is that even though it's not classified, the identity of the source might be compromised.
But
I
Tom,
think
if it's
they
a
partially,
whistleblower, Tom, hold on. This is my confusion. The whistleblowers aren't hiding in the shadows here. These guys are coming out and saying, you know, a number of FBI agents, former FBI agents, have appeared on numerous talk shows. These guys aren't hiding in the shadows. So this is all the part that's confusing me.
well, we don't
Now,
know who exactly, we don't know who divulged, which whistleblower divulged the information that's in that report. The ones that we've seen on TV and congressional committees and interviewed, by the media, they've been providing information relative to the different activities of the FBI, January 6th, or going after school board meetings with parents, all that kind of thing. But a different person brought out that this report, this FD 1023 report, contains this information about corruption by the Bidens. So that's a separate whistleblower specific to this 1023 report. Now, the mistake I was starting to say, the mistake, in my opinion, the FBI made is that they showed two different reports. They show the not redacted at all, basically, except for identity, name, and address of the informant that gave the information. So that one Grassley sees, and that one contains about the phone calls. Then the report that the FBI is supposed to be the same report, they bring to the members of the committee and let them see it, and they've redacted the main body of those phone calls out. And so later, after those members have seen the redacted 1023, it doesn't match what Grassley saw. It's supposed to be the same form. Grassley starts asking these members, basically, what do you think about the part of the phone calls that they've got information that phone calls were recorded by the Ukrainian with Hunter and with Joe Biden separately? And the members of Congress are like, what phone calls? What are you talking about? We didn't see anything about phone calls. So the FBI shows one report to Grassley, takes that same report and knocks out
you see,
large parts of that report.
that's
so
why
they don't match.
That's where we started this conversation. What's the value of the whistleblower if you're going to redact what he's blowing the whistle about? You see, that's my point, Tom. But I want to just ask you one question, sir, and this is really opinion driven. You know, the Republicans have this tendency to get the cart before the horse. Wouldn't it behoove Senator Grassley to be in possession of these tapes before he starts alluding to them? Because what if he can't get his hands on them now? I mean, they may very well exist, but how do you know there aren't external pressures or this government operating in back channels?
I don't know if anybody in the U.S., FBI or otherwise, is going to get their hands on those reports unless the person that made those recordings feels like he's got to show them for some reason. But that, to me, is not the key to this thing. It's not the most important fact. To me, it's not the most important fact that Grassley sees a different form of the report than the congressman. The key issue is this is 3 years ago from a credible, not just some, knucklehead walking down the street that walks into an FBI office. This is from a reliable, highly paid, highly vetted source who tells them basically that this corruption, this bribery has occurred. Now, my question is, what did they do with the information? What investigation was conducted? Typically, Director Wray would have hid behind the fact if they were doing an investigation, even if they were slow walking it for years and years, then the director's thing was 1023 or report or whatever. We're still conducting investigation. He's been hiding behind that since he's been director. That's a pending investigation. We can't talk about it. And then people raise the issue. Why is it still pending 4 or 5 years down the road? Why can't you figure this out? The FBI normally figures this out very quickly.
Yeah.
So you don't hear any of that. He
Tom,
denies that there is a report.
Let me
why
ask
does he
you.
lie?
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Finish your thought, Tom.
I'm saying Wray lies and says there's no report. And then when he's confronted over and over, finally he admits it. Then he shows two different versions of the same report, he being the FBI, two different versions of the same report that don't match. That one leaves out a critical piece of information about the recordings. That's the form that the members of that House committee saw that report. And it doesn't match what Grassley saw.
Tom, we're going to take a quick break and I'm going to come back to you because I want to continue this conversation. And most importantly, I want to know, and we're not doing this because we have a political platform attached to the Republican agenda, but the Republicans have made a lot of noise here. And I want to ask you, when we come back, is this ever going to bear any fruit? Guys, we're going to quick break, come back. This is Operation Truth. It's a whole new podcast. It's an offshoot of Between the Lines. We've rebranded, and you can see where we're driving this. We're just trying to get to the truth of these issues. We have no political attachment here, only to the truth. We'll be right back.
The world is in crisis, with political unrest and financially unstable countries trying to print their way to prosperity by taking on trillions of dollars of new debt. It's incredibly concerning. That's why you need to own silver as a hedge. So call today to receive the free hard asset information kit on how easy it is to own silver. Green energy demands will possibly turbocharge silver prices to 50, 100, even 300 an ounce, according to many experts around the world. Silver is a proven hedge against inflation. Since 1971, silver has returned over 11% when averaged yearly. Silver is a proven wealth preservation for hundreds of years. Hard Asset Management is a trusted leader in precious metals and rare coins for nearly 40 years. We have the guaranteed lowest prices, fast and easy ordering, expedited shipping, with award-winning customer service available 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. CST, Monday through Friday. So protect yourself from the chaos. Invest in stability with Hard Asset Management. Call now and get your free Hard Asset Management information kit on how easy it is for you to own silver. 844-426-4653. 844-426-4653.
Guys, We're back, ladies and gentlemen. We have with us one of our contributors to this. He's actually more than a contributor. He's part of the show, Tom Fuentes. And we've been speaking about this whistleblower because I just posed a really simple question about if you blow the whistle and you're trying to expose something and our FBI or any mechanism attached to the government redacts or suppresses what you're blowing the whistle about, what's the value of the whistleblower? I mean, this is kind of getting a little confusing for the public, and Tom has been able to elaborate that on us. But I want to come back to Tom and ask you an important question. And that is, the Republicans are talking a lot about these things. Are they going to get this in the proper form and have this spoken to? Now, our Herr Fuhrer here, Brian Williams, the architect of this podcast and the mastermind, has introduced some interesting questions himself. The thing that I have noticed, and I direct this to Brian, who I know is listening, and to Tom, more of our mainstream media are starting to latch on to these topics, which I think will allow us to bring us to the truth here, because the unfortunate part of this discussion is that people that latch on to a CNN or MSNBC are detached from the message that's being given by Fox, and conversely. This needs to be brought out into the open because it lends itself to the future of the country and the legitimacy of the country, and to our children who are watching this, guys, and we're destroying their belief in the credibility of the government and institutions like the FBI, which I remind everyone were that stopgap that when all else failed at one point in time, the FBI held it together. We trusted them implicitly with their agenda, that it would be in the best interest of this country, which seems to be slipping away. But Tom, I want to hit you with this question then. What do you think the likelihood is of the Republicans who are carrying this chant of getting this brought to light so that it can be properly addressed and we can start to revise or restructure the FBI? Some people are calling for the disbandment of the FBI. Am I right, Tom?
They're calling for it, but that's not going to happen, and it's not proper. And there are a lot of things.
Why do you believe that, Tom? Why do you believe?
Because the FBI is providing a service worldwide. It's highly respected, even to this day. And I'm in an Asian country now at a conference of graduates of the FBI's executive course from about 50 different police departments in Asia. And the respect that they have, or people within their country have, is still immense for the FBI. They're not hearing all of this reporting of bias or prejudice within the FBI that we're hearing domestically. That's not being conveyed overseas. So the partners that we work with, public overseas, are very convinced to this day that the FBI is still the preeminent law enforcement agency in the world, should be respected, should be trusted. That still matters, or people won't cooperate with the FBI. We won't hear the type of information that really matters if we don't have that kind of trust from the public and from the intelligence and law enforcement services that we work with all over the globe.
Tom, I got to interrupt you because you just made a really interesting point about the perception of the outside world as to the credibility of the FBI and why it's so important that they don't hear what's going on here, because it will harm us. I mean, this is kind of a rhetorical question, but do you think the upper management of the FBI has that as any consideration, that not only are they playing politics, but they're potentially destroying the belief in countries that cooperate with us? I mean, this is
Well,
just,
so far they're
it's
not.
out of
Those
control.
countries aren't really aware. This is not widely reported in those countries, and people don't
Why is
really
that,
get the
Tom, though?
details.
Why is that, do you
Well,
think,
it's
buddy?
not of interest. It's kind of like here in the U.S. We don't care for the most part about a lot of other countries. I would bet you that a majority of Americans couldn't find Ukraine on a map, if they were given an atlas. So I think that, but overseas it's the same way. These other people in the other countries, they're not aware of many of the things that we're aware of, and so that lack of information in some cases for the FBI is positive because they don't know the bad things that are going on in the name of the FBI. But I think that right now, it's domestically the disrespect. And I'm talking this week, I've been talking to agents who are working with foreign counterparts, but also working in the United States. And they're saying that what they're experiencing on the street right now, the hostility in some corners, not with criminals who are going to be hostile, but with members of the public, and some of the surveys saying that 60% of the public don't trust the FBI anymore or think that what they've been doing is not good. It's interesting. When I was my almost 30 years in the bureau, one of the leading sins that you could be accused of in the bureau, we joked with each other, was don't embarrass the bureau. And by that, they didn't mean just something that you did that was dumb, but don't do things that are wrong or immoral or lie, cheat, or steal to make a case. Be fair, be honest, have integrity, and people respected that. But right now, starting with you hear this, the notorious seventh floor. I spent my last 5 years in the FBI on the seventh floor, as one of the assistant directors overseeing investigations from the people that I supervised all over the world. And at that, the appearance is now that the FBI treats conservatives differently than liberals when the accusations are made. I'll give you an example of what it was like when George W. Bush was president, Dick Cheney vice president, Cheney's assistant Scooter Libby. The accusation is made that they outed the identity of a CIA case officer. Now, this is a CIA spy, the true spook.
Valerie Plame.
They don't
Valerie
call them
Plame.
agents, they call them case officers. This is
Right.
Valerie Plame.
Right.
And she had, throughout Africa and other countries, set up special operations and relationships and introduced people to work in various places. So when she was outed, that cost the CIA, they had to pull people out to keep them from getting killed. It cost millions of dollars in trying to cover up all of these various operations. So at that time, now this is a sitting Republican president and vice president. The U.S. attorney from Chicago, Fitzgerald, who was a friend of mine, was named special prosecutor, and he gets a couple dozen FBI agents with him, and they investigate this case. And within a year, they're in a position where they have convicted Scooter Libby, Cheney's assistant, and Libby is screaming bloody murder that he's never going to spend a day in jail. He can't go to jail. Please don't send me to jail. And so the president commutes his sentence. He doesn't pardon him, which takes away the conviction, but he commutes his sentence so that, okay, you're still convicted, you still lose your law license, but you're not going to jail. And that kind of ended the investigation. Fitzgerald and the agents were no longer going to have ability to put pressure on Cheney to go after him and testify against him. So the investigation stops. But imagine today an investigation like that against the sitting president or vice president of the United States, a team of FBI agents, a special prosecutor who really go after him. Now, some of the things, the length of time these investigations take is ridiculous. I ran international investigations, many over the years, and what should take a couple months to a year is taking 3, 4, 5 years, and then no real outcome.
Why is that, Tom? Why is that, Tom? No, Tom, speak to why that is, though.
Because I think they're protecting the Biden administration. That's why. I think there's bias in the FBI.
Even with this thing with Iran, even with this relationship with Iran, you think they're commingled there?
Well, yeah, I think that there's a great deal of that. But you have, ironically, this informant is told by the executives in Burisma that they're sending the money in a very circuitous manner to go through different companies and bank accounts and more or less money laundering to hide the fact that they're paying a direct bribe, to the Bidens. Now, somewhere in that mix of information, the oligarch says, yeah, the way we're setting it up, it'll take them 10 years to figure out what we did. Well, that tells me he's looking at the modern FBI on these political cases, that it will take them 10 years. It should take 10 months. So that's where the big problem comes up.
You know, Tom, we're going to have to wrap it today, but I'm going to ask you a question next week when we take up this conversation again in a very general sense, because there's no question the FBI culture has changed in upper management. And next week, I want to get into when you think that first reared its head, which presidential administration. And I have my own feeling, which I don't want to get into too deeply today, but I think this Fast and Furious was a turning point. Guys, we're going to wrap it today. I want to thank Tom for all of the insight, input, knowledge, and opinions. And a lot of this is opinions, guys. I want to be candid with you. We're trying to give you some food for thought. I do want to say something to you. There is no substitute for the truth, and the truth has no political affiliation. That's what I'm going to close with today. I thank you for joining us and for listening. And I thank Tom and everyone else that's participated in this production, TJ Stone, and everyone else that's built in around this thing. And I also want to thank Brian Williams for helping create this platform, because he's really brought this thing into some structure. Thank you, guys. We'll see you again next week.